Imagine waking up at 4:30 in the morning, unlocking the doors of a small coffee shop, and preparing for hundreds of customers you haven't even met yet. Before the first customer arrives, the owner has already turned on the lights, started the espresso machine, and begun preparing the store for another long day. By 7 in the morning, customers begin walking through the doors, looking for the one thing that will start their day: coffee. One customer orders a latte, another pays for a coffee, and within seconds, another transaction is already happening at the counter. Then comes the cold brew. It may look like a simple drink, but every sale contributes to the coffee shop's daily revenue. And many customers don't stop at coffee. They add a breakfast sandwich, turning a small drink purchase into a much larger transaction. So here's the big question: if coffee can be sold for several dollars while the ingredients seem relatively cheap, why isn't every coffee shop extremely profitable? Because the expensive part isn't the coffee bean. The expensive part is everything surrounding that coffee bean. Before opening, the owner has to transform an empty commercial space into a functioning business. And that transformation can easily require tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. The first major expense is the location. The owner needs a commercial space, a lease, and usually a security deposit before business can even begin. That means thousands of dollars can leave the owner's bank account before a single cup of coffee is sold. Then comes construction. Walls may need to be painted, counters installed, lighting added, and the entire space redesigned for customers. Plumbing and electrical work can add even more costs, especially because commercial coffee equipment requires significant power and water access. And then there's the heart of the operation, the professional espresso machine. A commercial machine can cost thousands of dollars. The owner also needs tables, chairs, lighting, shelves, counters, and everything else that turns an empty room into a place customers actually want to visit. Before opening, the business also needs inventory: coffee beans, milk, syrups, cups, lids, pastries, food, and countless other supplies. When all of these expenses are combined, opening a coffee shop can become a six-figure investment surprisingly quickly. That's why smart owners also keep working capital available. The business needs cash to survive while it builds its customer base. But here's something interesting: the coffee beans themselves may actually be one of the smaller costs in the entire operation. A barista measures a specific amount of ground coffee for every espresso shot. Portion control is important because small amounts of waste can add up over thousands of drinks. The espresso machine then turns those inexpensive beans into a product that customers may be willing to pay several dollars for. Milk becomes another ingredient, especially for popular drinks like lattes and cappuccinos. Then there are the cups, lids, sleeves, napkins, and other packaging materials that customers rarely think about. A customer might pay $5 for a drink, and at first glance, that can look like an enormous markup, but that $5 isn't profit. It has to help pay for employees, rent, electricity, equipment, insurance, maintenance, and dozens of other expenses. Labor is one of the biggest costs because coffee shops need people working almost constantly. And those employees are using electricity all day. Espresso machines, refrigerators, lights, ovens, ice machines, and other equipment all consume energy. Then there is rent. The building has to be paid for whether the cafe is busy or completely empty. Insurance is another necessary expense, protecting the business from risks that could otherwise create enormous financial problems. But among all these costs, one factor can make the biggest difference: location. A coffee shop near offices, schools, transportation hubs, or busy streets can have hundreds of potential customers passing by every day. Move that same coffee shop to a quiet street with little foot traffic, and the economics can change completely. A busy cafe might serve hundreds of customers every day, with multiple baristas working continuously during peak hours. A quiet cafe may have only a handful of customers during the same period, and that's why customer volume is so important. The more customers the business serves, the more efficiently it can spread its fixed costs across sales. But coffee has another powerful advantage. Customers can come back again and again. For many people, visiting the same coffee shop becomes part of their daily routine. That's why loyalty programs are so valuable. A free drink or reward can encourage customers to keep returning. Mobile ordering makes the habit even easier. Customers can place an order before they even arrive at the cafe, when hundreds of small transactions happen every day. Those individual purchases can turn into significant monthly revenue. A busy point-of-sale system can process transaction after transaction, especially during the morning rush. But that revenue doesn't stay in the owner's pocket. It immediately gets divided among ingredients: labor, rent, utilities, maintenance, and other costs. This is why staffing becomes a balancing act. The owner needs enough employees to handle demand without paying for unnecessary labor. If too many employees are scheduled during a slow period, labor costs can eat into profits without generating additional sales. But if there are too few employees during a rush, the opposite problem appears: overwhelmed workers and unhappy customers. Long lines can cause customers to leave, especially when they're rushing to work or school. That's why speed matters. A well-designed coffee shop can serve more customers without dramatically increasing its fixed costs. And nowhere is that more important than during the morning rush, when demand can suddenly explode. That is why many coffee shops open very early. The store needs to be fully prepared before the first wave of customers arrives. And here's another important part of the business: food. A modern coffee shop often operates partly as a breakfast business. When a customer buys both a drink and a breakfast sandwich, the average transaction becomes much larger. But preparing food also means more ingredients, more labor, and more opportunities for waste. At the end of the day, unsold pastries and sandwiches may have to be thrown away. Milk, bread, and other ingredients can also expire if the owner orders more than the cafe can realistically sell. That's why inventory management matters. The goal is to have enough products available without creating unnecessary waste. Then comes pricing. A coffee shop isn't simply charging customers for ingredients. It's charging for perceived value. A stylish cafe with comfortable seating, attractive design, music, Wi-Fi, and a great atmosphere can often charge more than a basic coffee counter. Customers aren't only buying coffee. They're buying convenience, consistency, comfort, and the overall experience. Add-ons make the economics even more interesting. Extra espresso-flavored syrup or alternative milk can increase the value of an order. A customer who originally wanted only coffee might also buy a muffin, cookie, or pastry. And when hundreds of customers increase their average order by even a few dollars, monthly revenue can rise dramatically. Delivery is another modern source of sales. Customers can order coffee and breakfast without ever entering the store. But delivery also changes the economics because platforms may take fees or commissions from each order. That's why some cafes encourage customers to order directly, allowing the business to keep more of the revenue. Then there is equipment. A serious coffee shop depends on expensive machines that need to operate every day. And when that equipment breaks, the cost can be painful. A broken espresso machine can interrupt the entire business. Regular maintenance, therefore, isn't optional. Keeping equipment working can prevent much larger problems later. Rent creates another major challenge. A premium location can cost thousands of dollars every month, but sometimes expensive rent makes sense if that location brings in dramatically more customers and revenue. This brings us to one of the most important concepts in business: the break-even point. The cafe has to generate enough sales to cover all of its expenses before the owner can truly say the business is profitable. And that's why a coffee shop can look packed while still struggling financially. High sales don't automatically mean high profit. Successful owners constantly track revenue, ingredient costs, labor, rent, operating expenses, and ultimately net profit. But there's another problem. If the owner has to personally work behind the counter every day just to keep the business running, they may have created a job rather than a scalable business. The goal is to build systems and train employees so the cafe can operate efficiently even when the owner isn't standing behind the counter. Once the first location becomes consistently profitable, the owner may consider opening a second cafe, but expansion creates new risks: another lease, more employees, more equipment, and another large investment. And when you look at the entire business, that simple cup of coffee is connected to a huge economic machine involving employees, rent, equipment, ingredients, customers, technology, and cash flow. So the next time you pay $5 for a latte, remember you're not just paying for coffee beans, you're paying for an entire business system that has to make that cup, serve it quickly, and still make money after every expense. That is the economics of owning a coffee shop.